Hello and welcome to Beyond Business, where we look at competition in the global economy. What's in a name? In this show, we're looking at how companies build up and defend their brands. There's a tough economic climate, and a strong brand name could be key to boost sales. Building a brand can take time, and once it's established, the competition is often fierce. Coca-Cola is a case in point. Seen as one of the world's strongest brands, it's facing global as well as local competition.
For Brez Cola, perseverance has paid off. The Brittany-based French company's taken the fight to the global number one, Coca-Cola, walking off with up to 14% of the market across the west of France.
We're going on the offensive from Brittany towards Paris and its surrounding region. It's a huge arena because it's not just 1.5 million Bretons, but tomorrow's consumers too, the ones in other regions.
300 kilometers from the French capital, this bottling factory saw an investment of €2 million last year. Brez Cola now shares its production line with Breton cider manufacturers Loïc Raison. Modern technology means they can run off 7,000 bottles an hour. Over the Atlantic, Coca-Cola's shown signs of worry. For the first time in the US giant's history, it's put out advertising specifically targeting Brittany. But marketing's about much more than playing on Breton identity.
I think consumers today want to make more of the fact that they buy local, because buying locally means producing locally, to say I'm not just taking part in the creation of jobs, but also in conveying a positive image of my region.
Such an image is reinforced by regional events, like the Vieille Charrue Festival, one of Europe's largest music gatherings, with more than 200,000 visitors.
Choosing a Breton company is really almost a philosophical choice for the association. I won't hide the fact we've been approached by much larger firms, soft drink multinationals, but we really prefer to favor Breton businesses.
From its beginnings 10 years ago, Brez Cola's become the regional number one, and others are following in its footsteps. Auvergnat Cola, Corsica Cola and Stila Cola in France, Mecca Cola in the Middle East, Vita Cola in Germany, Jolly Cola in Denmark, and here in Spanish Galicia, Gali Cola. The firm's just 3 years old, part of a project to defend the Galician language. In fact, the company's so small, it doesn't have a single salaried worker and only operates for 3 afternoons a year.
We
produce nearly 25,000 2.5-liter bottles a year, and maybe 3,000 or 4,000 2-liter bottles, which are distributed at around 150 points of sale, for the most part at bars and during specific events in different towns.
Here, among Santiago de Compostela's pilgrims and pro-independence demonstrators, Gali Cola's providing the refreshments.
Alternative to Coca-Cola, on sale here, just €1. Have you tried Gali Cola?
The firm's means are extremely basic. In fact, Gali Cola's gain in popularity may have more to do with its ideology rather than its taste. With Spain badly hit by the economic downturn, buying local counts now more than ever.
It shows it's a product of this land, and for me that's the best. Money stays here, it's made here.
Gali Cola shares the fight with the independence youth movement. Indeed, cola's become a political question.
In one way, the project's helping to eliminate Coca-Cola's monopoly. In another, it gives us a feeling of, yes, we can. We have the capacity to act in several areas, including that of cola, which at first sight seems concerned only with consumerism and isn't really something political.
In turning cola into a regional anchor, these companies have found a solid niche for themselves. And that's a form of competition the US giants over the Atlantic are going to have to take into account in the years to come.
Okay, let's talk more about brands now with Erin Murphy. She's Executive Director of Strategy at Interbrand, which is a branding consultancy. Welcome to France 24 and welcome to Beyond Business.
Thank you.
Now, Interbrand, your company, says that Coca-Cola is among one of the strongest brands in the world. How do you measure brand value?
Coca-Cola is actually #1 on our Best Global Brands League table, and they've been #1 for a few years now. We measure value by looking at three things. There's one, the economic value, trying to isolate what's the economic contribution of the brand to the business. We also look at the overall role of the brand. Different sectors, different industries have different roles. That's the part of the brand that influences your choice. So things like price and style and features. Coke might be more in the branding itself that has the most value, because other than that, it's water and sugar for the most part. So the brand counts for a lot in terms of the role of the brand. And then there's the brand strength. And that's made up of 10 factors, and I won't go into all 10 because we'll bore your audience with the details. But strong brands really have 6 external factors that we look at and 4 internal. And Coke is a really good example of someone that gets it right across all the dimensions of brand strength. And that's why, looking at the reportage, I think Coke is one of the strongest brands in the world, because they're able to locally adapt their brand, but also stay absolutely true to who they are. So they're very authentic.
Now, you touched on this. This report really shows how global meets local to a certain extent. But how should global giants like a Coca-Cola then take on local competitors like British Cola in Brittany and as Gallicola in Galicia? What should it be doing in order to compete with these smaller rivals?
I think Coke's reaction in terms of putting out an ad that embraces a little bit of Brittany is a good example of how they have the confidence and the clarity about who they are to flex their brand in different markets. Their brand is all about being open. And so by tailoring it locally and by showing that they're not just a big conglomerate, they're not a big global brand, they can have the confidence to alter. And they do that in a lot of markets. We see with Jean-Paul Gaultier here in Paris, they're able to keep some elements consistent about their brand, but they have the confidence to really expand and bring in different nuances that are more locally adapted.
But do you think that consumers are really buying these attempts by Coca-Cola, among other companies, to become local? At the end of the day, Coca-Cola, when I think about it, I think the United States of America. It's an American brand.
Actually, I think what we've seen in looking at the league table and the research we've done around best global brands is that if a brand is authentic and that it really understands their consumers, I mean, that there's a real understanding of what's important to those consumers in the different markets, they're able to really be relevant and compellingly different. It is that acknowledgement that there is differences culturally that gives them a lot of power to actually have the confidence to flex their brand, which if you don't have complete clarity, if you're not completely authentic, customers see through that. Customers have a lot at their disposal. We're a different type of consumer today than maybe we were 10 years ago.
How do you express authenticity as a company, though?
Authenticity comes through in all of the actions of a company. Companies that do it well understand that it goes beyond the product itself, that it goes into understanding the complete experience for a consumer. Every single time that they communicate, every single interaction, behaviors, attitude, that's how you show you're truly authentic. So it has to go way beyond what we would think it's just in the product codes. It goes into the service. It goes into the attitude. It goes into what they do beyond. So what they sponsor, how they act and behave locally as well as globally, the positions that they take on certain issues, their willingness to actually have a voice on other things beyond their brand.
But isn't there a risk that global companies like Coca-Cola, like Apple, like Microsoft and other major brands, that they could be seen to be too global and not local enough? Basically, they could be seen as bullies.
There is always that risk. It all depends on how it's executed. Again, I come back to, if you see your brand as a living business asset, and strong brands think of their brands in that way. They're constantly nurturing it. They're constantly looking at how to evolve it and keep it relevant. They're also really focused on being true. Because when they fail, there is a big risk, and people talk about it a lot more. And they would much rather be known for the positive things than they do than the negative. And then we say it's also in how you deal with some of the negative things that really make you authentic in the end.
Now, the current economic climate, I suppose you could say it's difficult at best. Does that usually benefit global brands?
I think all brands would prefer to operate in a rosier economic situation. The thing that's great about strong brands is that they're more resilient to economic downturns. Because they've thought about managing their brands as a living business asset, they've built in mechanisms that mean that they can anticipate change easier.
But doesn't tough economic times, doesn't it mean that customers, they're more willing to look around, so to speak, for instance, to go towards cheaper brands?
Mm-hmm. Only if that cheaper brand is known to them. Cheaper brands are relevant from a price standpoint, true. But strong brands also go beyond the price. So they're able to actually understand customer needs probably better than some smaller, cheaper brands. They're more insightful, and they really try to position it in a way where it is fair value, and that the customer is very, very clear in what they're buying.
So a strong brand sounds a little bit like an insurance policy against tough economic times.
Well, think about it from a consumer standpoint. In tough economic times, we're faced with a lot more decisions, and sometimes a strong brand is just an easier choice because it's more understood. We know what we're getting, and at the end of the day, it's one less risk that we have to manage.
All right, Erin Murphy from Interbrand, it's been a pleasure to speak to you. Thanks very much indeed
Thank you very much.
Speaking to us here at France 24. And with that, we're going to wrap up the program. Thanks for watching.